Picture this. It's 1988, yeah? Hair metal is entering its death throes. Thrash is getting more extreme than anyone's dentist wants to think about. And somewhere in Connecticut, a teenage Rivers Cuomo is trying to become the next Eddie Van Halen by practicing scales for 8 hours a day with a metronome because fuck spontaneity, apparently. His band is called Avant Garde, later Zoom, after they moved to Los Angeles in 1989. They play progressive hair metal with lyrics about castles and wizards, and they sound exactly like what happens when suburban kids discover Judas Priest and decide that modesty is for quitters. This is the story of how Weezer made the Blue Album, the record that proved nerds could rock, that proved you didn't need to be cool to be great, and that a band could go from metal disasters to power pop perfection faster than it takes most people to change their major. It's about Rivers Cuomo's journey from would-be guitar god to reluctant dork messiah, and how one accidental discovery of the Beach Boys at a used record store changed everything. But before we get into how they made one of the most perfect debut albums ever recorded, we need to understand just how spectacularly wrong Cuomo's previous musical incarnation was. Avant Garde, later renamed Zoom after they moved to Los Angeles in 1989, was technical heavy metal in the vein of Judas Priest, Yngwie Malmsteen, and Fates Warning. Even Cuomo took guitar lessons from Fates Warning's guitarist Jim Mathios, which tells you everything about his ambitions. "I was always in bands growing up," Cuomo recalled years later. "In those days, I was almost anti-punk. I did not like punk music or the whole punk aesthetic. My attitude was pretty much exclusively metal. Practice your scales, your arpeggios, use a metronome, and don't play sloppy. I was anti-nihilist, really." The band was deadly serious about technical proficiency, rehearsing 3 or 4 times a week for hours, shunning partying and drugs, kicking out members who wanted to have fun instead of practicing sweet-picking arpeggios. They recorded 3 demos between 1987 and 1989, complete with hairsprayed looks and dramatic photo shoots. Rivers' contribution was primarily guitar playing and soloing, intricate, technical, showing off everything he'd learned about scales and modes. Then, they moved to LA in 1989, changed their name to Zoom, played 1 show in late 1991, and broke up. The dream was dead. Hair metal was dying, grunge was exploding. Nobody wanted to hear technical guitar solos anymore. They wanted authenticity, rawness, sloppiness even. Everything Cuomo had spent years perfecting was suddenly worthless. So he got a job at Tower Records on Sunset Boulevard. And that's where everything changed. Getting the job at Tower really helped me. I got exposed to all different kinds of music. Not just the latest cool music, but also going back to the 1960s and hearing the Beach Boys and the Beatles. The pivotal moment came when Cuomo went to Record Surplus in Santa Monica with just enough money to buy 1 album. He narrowed it down to 2, Led Zeppelin II or the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. It was basically a coin toss, he admitted, and he walked out with Pet Sounds. That single purchase redirected his entire musical trajectory. Pet Sounds taught him that melody mattered more than technical proficiency, that vulnerability was more powerful than virtuosity, that simple chord progressions executed perfectly were better than complex ones executed impressively. He went on a deep dive, buying every Beach Boys album he could afford, studying Brian Wilson's vocal arrangements and harmonic structures. At Tower Records, he also met Patrick Wilson, a drummer from Buffalo, and through mutual friends connected with Matt Sharp, a bassist who would become Weezer's de facto manager and aesthetic guru. Sharp wasn't interested in metal. He pushed Cuomo toward thinking more like the Beach Boys, more melodic, more pop. I think that's where Matt's head was at the time. Yeah, let's not be grunge, let's be more like the Beach Boys, but louder. They formed Weezer on February 14, 1992, with Jason Cropper on guitar. The name came from a childhood nickname Cuomo's largely absent father had given him, Weezer, after a character in Our Gang or Little Rascal short films. I remember receiving letters from my dad addressed to Weezer. It was definitely an emotional name for me. It ties back to the feeling of being an abandoned, neglected little kid. Their first show was March 19th, 1992, opening for Keanu Reeves' band Dogstar. Dogstar played and played and played, Cropper recalled. They finished and all the pretty girls left. Only 5 or so friends remained, but we gave it our all on stage. They spent most of 1992 playing to mostly empty clubs. This was peak grunge era. Audiences wanted to see bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains.
A band mixing Beach Boys harmonies with loud guitars seemed hopelessly out of step. Some LA alt-rockers even speculated that Weezer's label had assembled them like the Monkees, a manufactured band designed to capitalize on alternative rock without actually being alternative. In November 1992, they recorded a demo called The Kitchen Tape featuring early versions of Say It Ain't So and other future classics. Todd Sullivan, an A&R rep at Geffen Records, heard it and signed them in June 1993. For the album, they considered self-producing, but Geffen pressured them to choose an established name. They sent tapes to 3 candidates, Rick Ocasek, The Cars, Lenny Kaye, Patti Smith, and the team of Sean Slade and Paul Q. Colderi, Radiohead, Pixies. They chose Ocasek. I'd always admired The Cars and Rick Ocasek's songwriting and production skills, Cuomo explained. Ocasek had one condition. They had to come to New York because his wife, model Paulina Portozikova, was pregnant with their first son. Recording began in August 1993 at Electric Lady Studios, the legendary venue where Jimi Hendrix had recorded. I was beside myself because I knew Kiss had recorded there, Cuomo remembered. I remember going to the bathroom for the first time thinking Ace Frehley sat on this toilet that I'm about to sit on. Ocasek was a gentle guiding hand, sitting in his chair with his knees folded up like a giant stork, constantly doodling psychedelic drawings. He convinced the band to change their guitar pickup from neck to bridge, resulting in a brighter sound. He also insisted they record Buddy Holly, which Cuomo had written but considered too cheesy to include. I remember at one point he was hesitant to do Buddy Holly, Ocasek later recalled, and I was like, Rivers, we can talk about it. Do it anyway, and if you don't like it when it's done, we won't use it, but I think you should try. Ocasek even left little notes around the studio. We want Buddy Holly. The sessions were intense. Cuomo was in the studio at least 12 hours a day, mostly in a dark room by himself. Meanwhile, a fault line was deepening between Jason Cropper and the rest of the band. Cropper had gotten his girlfriend pregnant, she started coming to sessions, and the vibe became weird. More importantly, the band felt he was threatening their chemistry. On September 12, 1993, with the album nearly finished, they fired Cropper. What it really boiled down to was that whatever it is we were setting out to do, it felt like it was going to be much more difficult if he stayed, Sharp explained diplomatically. They needed a replacement immediately. They had exactly one option: Brian Bell, a guitarist they'd only seen playing bass in a band called Carnival Art. We'd never seen or heard him play guitar, Sharp admitted. We'd only seen him play bass, and I thought, that is one debonair son of a bitch. I think Matt and Rivers just thought Bell looked great, Wilson said, cutting through the bullshit. Bell looked like a guitarist, handsome, cool, with the right aesthetic. He was also a Star Wars nerd who fit their geek vibe perfectly. They called him, "Do you want to be in our band?" Bell was overnighted a tape, recorded himself playing along as an audition, and sent it back. The next day, Geffen flew them to New York on a red-eye. When I landed, there was a little man with a chauffeur hat and a long limousine with a phone in it. It felt so Led Zeppelin, Bell recalled. At Electric Lady, they played him the almost finished album. The first song they put on was In the Garage, Bell remembered. It was incredible, like a lot of the indie stuff I was listening to, like Dinosaur Jr. and Pavement, but polished. I looked at them and said, guys, we're going to be fucking huge. Bell arrived too late to play guitar on the album. Cuomo had already re-recorded all of Cropper's parts himself, reportedly all 10 tracks in one day, each in one take. Bell only contributed backing vocals, but he was in the band photos, so to the world, he was an original member. The Blue Album was released May 10, 1994, a month after Kurt Cobain's death, just as grunge was entering its traumatized aftermath phase. The initial critical response was skeptical at best. Because Weezer had no indie releases, no years of grinding on the underground circuit, many dismissed them as manufactured. Somebody called us Stone Temple Pixies, Cuomo recalled bitterly, referring to how Stone Temple Pilots were seen as corporate imitators of grunge. To us, the music sounded amazing, so to have it dismissed like that was painful. Sharp remembered seeing promotional copies of the album in record store 99-cent bins shortly after release. It looked like the album might be a commercial disaster despite Geffen's investment. But then Undone the Sweater Song started catching on at college radio and trend-setting stations like KROQ in LA. The video, directed by Spike Jonze with a single tracking shot of the band performing while chaos erupts around them, started getting MTV play. Then Buddy Holly exploded. The Buddy Holly video, also directed by Jonze, was pure genius. It portrayed Weezer performing at Arnold's Drive-In from the sitcom Happy Days, seamlessly integrating footage of the band with clips from the show. Happy Days cast member Al Molinaro appeared, introducing Kenosha, Wisconsin's own Weezer. It was achieved without CGI, just clever camera work and editing. The video was included on the Windows 95 installation CD-ROM, exposing millions of people to Weezer, whether they wanted it or not. I was furious because at the time I was like, how are they allowed to do this without permission? Wilson admitted. Turns out it was one of the greatest things that could have happened to us. Can you imagine that happening today? At the 1995 MTV Video Music Awards, Buddy Holly won Best Alternative Video, Breakthrough Video, Best Direction, and Best Editing. The Blue Album went platinum, then double platinum, then triple platinum. By 2024, it was certified 5 times platinum, with over 15 million copies sold worldwide. But commercial success came with a bitter irony for Cuomo. He hadn't wanted to be seen as a nerd. He'd wanted to be taken seriously as an artist, maybe even as the next Kurt Cobain. Instead, he became the poster boy for Geek Rock. The media focused on the glasses, the awkwardness, the in the garage references to Kiss posters and D&D. They weren't treating him like a serious musician, they were treating him like a novelty act. People perceive us now as a credible band and that we've always been credible. But man, we were so heavily criticized when we first came out. He was bothered that audiences didn't realize he'd once been a metal musician because there was so much anxiety about authenticity at the time. The perception stung. He'd spent years mastering technical guitar, only to be celebrated for writing simple, catchy songs. He'd wanted to be Kurt Cobain, tortured, authentic, dangerous. Instead, he was Rivers Cuomo, bespectacled, nerdy, safe. But here's the thing. The Blue Album's greatness lies precisely in its unashamed nerdiness, its refusal to be cool. Songs like In the Garage celebrated isolation and geek culture without irony. Say It Ain't So dealt with alcoholism and family trauma with unflinching honesty. Only in Dreams was an 8-minute epic about romantic longing that built to a cathartic guitar solo, the one place where Cuomo let his metal past show. The album melded his metal guitar background with 60s pop melodies and grunge's confessional lyrics, creating something that was neither retro nor trendy, just timeless. It was the Beach Boys with Marshall stacks, Brian Wilson produced by someone who understood distortion pedals. Looking back, the Blue Album proved that you didn't need to be cool to make great rock music. You just needed great songs, killer melodies, and the courage to be exactly who you were, even if who you were was a technically proficient ex-metalhead who discovered Pet Sounds too late and accidentally created one of the most perfect debut albums in rock history, while being deeply disappointed that nobody thought he was cool. And honestly, in an age when authenticity is performed and vulnerability is curated for Instagram, Weezer's accidental honesty, their inability to be anything other than sincere nerds making power pop, feels more revolutionary than any amount of studied coolness ever could. That's basically everything about how a failed metal guitarist discovered Pet Sounds, formed a band with people who thought he looked interesting, fired their original guitarist for vibes, hired a replacement because he was handsome, and accidentally created one of the most perfect debut albums in rock history while being deeply disappointed that nobody thought he was cool.